Hello and welcome to another edition of the LaLanne Pass It On podcast, where we honor the pioneers, the visionaries, and the modern masters of health, fitness, and longevity. My name is Greg Justice, and I'm here with my co-host and, of course, the real star of the show, Elaine LaLanne. Elaine, how are you today?
Oh, I'm great. I'm not really a star, but I mean, um, we've got a real star today. He's a sculptor. So we'll hear all about the sculptor in a minute. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, today on the LaLanne Pass It On podcast, we are honored to welcome a special guest whose passion for health, strength, and authentic living echoes the very spirit of Jack LaLanne himself. Today's guest is a true icon in the world of physique transformation. He is a man with over 43 years of professional fitness training excellence under his belt. He is a master of body sculpting, an elite master trainer, and a master of online coaching with a client list that spans from everyday individuals to elite competitors. His philosophy is rooted in precision, passion, and deep experience in everything from sports conditioning and rehabilitation to beauty competition prep and complete physical transformation. Please welcome to the show a living example of what it means to reshape not just your body, but your life, and to do it with purpose, discipline, and heart. Danny, we are honored to have you as our special guest today.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here, and especially with you two, and I'm sorry, not a star, but a mega star, Elaine Lane. Yeah, and
You know why I'm a megastar? Because I'm 99 years old.
oh no, you were a mega star in those leotards back on TV. I remember you.
I'm one of those people who started in the very at the transmitters. The television came on at 6 o'clock at night, and then we started at 4:30 in the afternoon, and that's when I went on an hour and a half show in San Francisco, and then that's how eventually that was 1949, and then eventually when Jack started on 51, or I that's when I uh, met him. But anyway, that's another story. So we want to
Yeah,
hear about sculpting. I
sculpting.
know about sculpting. Well, first
Yeah,
of all, I want to bring up sculpting in a minute. I happened to use this the other day because when I first met Jack and I heard him on the air, he took a piece of clay and he had it like this. And then he says, "See, I can sculpt that into any way that I want." And so you could do that with your body. So here, I happen to have some clay because I used it the other I bought this at the dollar store and I used it the other day as an example. But you are a body sculptor. Now we're going to hear about body sculpting. But before we do that, Jack said you can actually sculpt your body. And and you are the epitome of body sculpting. And I see that Vince Gironda, I understand that you knew him and worked out as a gym. See, this is body sculpting. 48
yes,
chest and a 26-inch waist. And 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 you'll see that Steve Reeves, you'll see that all these people who sculpted their body kind of look like this, and that's
yeah.
and that's not using any drugs. So I'll shut up. Jack says I run off at the mouth and run up his bills, but so now
We
I'll
love
let
to hear from you.
now I let you talk
Okay. Well,
about body sculpting.
about body sculpting, yes. And you know what's funny? You brought up the clay, and I remember something, to the context of clay. And I think Jack actually told me that one day because I was having a conversation with you and him at an expo, and I was telling him about the body sculpting, that how my family, my dad's side of the family, were all artists. So we had painters and pencil artist, and we had one sculptor. And so I kind of took up after that. I really fell into the world of art where I could pretty much draw anything. I could even draw for Disney if I really wanted to back in the day when I practiced a lot. But when people come to me, I actually explain it to them exactly what you said, Elaine. Um, Body sculpting is exactly like clay sculpting, where you actually look at a block of clay and you already see the sculpture before it's even started. So, and then it's just piecework, it's balance and symmetry, it's creating that beauty of the natural body, not with all the enhancements that people are doing now, which disfigures people. To me, when I look at a body, both men and women, I look at this beautiful sculpture of what a woman should look like with the soft curves and the roundness and but symmetry, balance between the upper and lower bodies. And it's the same thing with men. And the one thing that following and it's like with Jack, he had that beautiful V taper, and that's what really entranced me because I wanted that V taper. Bruce Lee had that V taper. He was thin, but he's super muscular.
Yeah.
So that V taper was something that I always looked at. That's the look of the male body with that V taper and the cap shoulders and the lats. And so when I met Vince Garanda, I was actually going off a little bit to the side of how everybody else was doing it, just building bulk and size. But I kind of had the body of a gymnast already, so I kind of had the balance and symmetry of being a gymnastics athlete. And so in my creation of that, he says that's the right track to go on. He goes, you don't want to do what everybody else is doing. You want to do what is the best for your natural state in your body. So you got to look at the genetic makeup of each person and look at, if they got short legs or long legs, a short torso or a long torso. How am I going to sculpt that body to perfection to make it look as equal and symmetrical to their lower body, even if they have elongation or shortness? And so over the time that the things that Vince taught me, he said just use lighter weights, use more tension, time under tension, and really focus your mind into what you're doing. Each repetition counts. And then as things started developing these beautiful bodies, and I started developing a 20 repetition program where it really developed that muscle deeper and caused more hypertrophy. And all of a sudden, I was creating these bodies in half the time without enhancements, and I was beating everybody that was doing enhancements. Isn't that crazy?
Well, I like that 20-minute. I mean, 20 reps. He can tell you what I did do for 20 reps because I showed him one time we were down in Texas, or no, we were in Florida, right?
Orlando.
I do 20 jackknives, right?
Yeah, and every time we talk about this, of course, I have to overlay her doing the 20 jackknives into the podcast. So this will be a part of the
Wow,
podcast, Danny. You'll see her
really?
doing her 20 jackknives, of course. Hey,
But
but before we go too deep into this, because I definitely want to talk about this, let's roll the clock back to your early days. Before we get into, Vince and all the influences, let's roll the clock back to you. I want to know more about your background. What sparked your journey into fitness and wellness?
What started me, I really believe, and when I was writing my memoir, and then even in my book that I just released, my 20 reps, the world domination, it's really kind of like going back inside myself when you're writing and you're looking back. Excuse me. What was that one time in my life that really sparked that seed to pop? And I really thought I'd really go back to when I moved to Spain. And it was the 13 years I spent in Spain with my two uncles in Spain, in Sevilla, Spain. And they're both
how
farmers.
old are you then?
I was 4 years old. I was there from 4 years old to 13 years old.
Okay.
And so they were farmers. They worked the farm. My other uncle also worked the farm, but then he had a shoe gallery, so he would make shoes. And I fell in trance with this. My uncle Manolo, Manuel, his arms. He had these enormous arms, and I would always grab his arm. And he says, "One day you'll have arms like this." And he goes, "All I do is I work the farm, but just punching this leather with this big needle." and it got his arms to be this size. And I said, Uncle, one day I want to have arms like that. One day I want to have arms like that. And he says, someday you will, someday you will. And he'd flex, and I'd always be commenting all that. Well, he bought me my first barbell, which was a barbell. You remember the ones that were concrete wrapped in plastic with
Oh
a
yeah.
aluminum pole. And so I would go out there and I would just do curls and do curls and really fall into. I really like this feeling. From there, I was really always into sports. I have two brothers that were awkward. They couldn't play sports. They just didn't have the balance in them. But I would play baseball, basketball, football, and I'd excel. I'd always be on the top teams. And I just fell in love with fitness. I couldn't do anything else. And it wasn't until I got into middle school. I'm sorry, middle school, that I saw a guy that had a 21 pull up record, and I said I could beat that, and I could beat it, and I could beat it. It took me a year and a half. Man, I could start from 4 and 5, but I ended up doing 22 pull ups where his record was 21. And then I locked the competition. I love that competition. I moved into high school where I started doing gymnastics. I was actually junior high school, and I did gymnastics. My body started developing, and people started noticing, especially the girls. They started going, "Wow, look at the muscles on Danny." That's enough to make you want to do gymnastics. 6 hours a day.
Yeah,
Um,
you're kind of like Jack because Jack grew up on the ranch from 4 to 14, and
yeah.
then he went to then he found about a box of weights at the YMCA. So almost it's parallels with your growing up. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. But I
Oh no,
do.
no, you could talk anytime, Elaine. Well, you know what, and that really didn't thwart me to the left or right because I was looking for my LaLanne at that time, and I didn't find her till I was 54. So I found my wife. So, um, but I ended up meeting a guy. He looked like Conan. He was a Mexican Indian, and he was working out in the gym. And he says, "Hey, you got a pretty good frame." He goes, "Would you like to work out?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I love the way you look." And he says, "Well, I just been working out at home and then at home gym," and he pretty much destroyed me, and that made me even fall in love with fitness more. And from that point forward, I never looked back. I picked up every magazine I could, and on our little TV, like you said, we had what, two channels, and they started at 4:30 or 5:30. It was black and white. We would watch Jack LaLanne. My dad was into fitness, but he was in the war and he kind of got messed up with all the Agent Orange and everything. But he was behind me and he said, "Hey, there's Jack LaLanne. You like that?" And I would sit there and do push-ups off the coffee table. I do push-ups on the floor and sit-ups, and so I always stayed really fit all through my childhood. Um, and I always had that framework of this is how a man should be. He should be fit. He should be the force. In a relationship, he should be a force in life.
Jack
Um,
used to say, the more a man works out, the more manly he becomes, the more a woman looks up, the more feminine she becomes.
there you go. He had the verbiage where I don't. He had beautiful sayings. Um, and from there, it pretty much blossomed where I got my body to one point. Then it was in high school, my senior year, and people said, "Well, why don't you compete in those bodybuilding shows? You look pretty good." And I said, "I'm not even near that. I'll never be able to look like, you know, uh, those days, which I adored, Steve Reeves, and Jack LaLanne, Steve Reeves.
Well, you
Uh,
know what? Can I mention something about Steve Reeves?
yes,
Steve was a good friend, and he he started with Jack, and then of course Jack went in the service. He went over with another fellow that was a buddy of his, and Jack always said, and to the day Steve died, they were close. But Jack said, one of the most beautiful, probably the most great physiques in life was Steve Reeves. He said he
yeah,
had like perfect perfect dimensions, and
Yeah.
I would think you would agree too, right? Right.
Oh yeah, and his dimension, his just, and that was the epitome of how a man should look. It's like I think of when you kind of follow suit. He had that same V frame, and he had nice legs. He had the upper body. He had the small
He
waist with the V taper. Yeah.
Yeah, Jack always said he probably was is probably the epitome of the perfect physique.
Well,
Yeah.
it seemed like Jack influenced a lot of people. That he influenced me. But and everywhere I go, Jack LaLanne's name comes up all the time, and I have him up on my wall. I have the books, I have the old videos. So it's to me, I keep myself surrounded around the older icons, old school. Because that's
Yeah.
my influence. I'm not into the new wave stuff with all the
Do you
stuff that's
have this one? Do you?
actually, Greg gifted that to me. I'm like, I
Oh,
was
good,
honored.
good.
We talked about, Jack's influence on your life, but I know one of Jack's friends was a huge influence in your life and mentor. Tell us the first time you met your mentor, Vince, how that came about. I know this story, but share that with Elaine and everyone listening.
Well, I was working at Gold's Gym. I was running the Gold's Gym in Pacific Beach in San Diego, and a gentleman walked in, and his name was Phil Tauber, and a thin guy, tall, probably about 6'3", maybe 6'4", and he asked, "Hey, is there anybody here to show me some stuff in the gym? I just kind of want to get a good workout. I just moved out here, bought a house out here, and I'm just." And he goes, "You guys look really fit." And I said, "Well, yeah, just work out with us." And he goes, "Well, I'm 170 pounds. You guys are what, like 280, 260?" And I said, "Yeah, but that doesn't matter. It's like, just work in with us. I'll strip the weight off and we'll work out together." And so we ended up working out for like 3 days together. And this guy said nothing, absolutely nothing to who he was and who he knew. Well, come the fourth day, he says, "Hey, you mind if I show you something?" And I said, "Well, what are you going to show us?" He says, I want to show you a workout that a friend of mine taught me. And so he went right into this routine, very lightweight, almost nothing, but it was supersetting the body and in weird configurations with the elbows and stuff. And he just kicked our butts. And he said, "Hey, do you mind if I come back tomorrow?" And I said, "Oh, heck yeah, man, that was amazing." And me and my partner, it was at oh my God, was it the Bill Stone cipher? I think it was. Um, he said, "What the heck? That guy just floored us." So for the next 2 days, this guy took us through legs and back and shoulders and arms, and he just floored us. And we were so sore we could barely move for a week. Well, his last day he comes in, he says, "Hey, I'm leaving. I'm going to Europe, and I just wanted to thank you so much for letting me work out with you." And he goes, "I got something to tell you." He goes, "I write the books and booklets for Vince Garanda. I do the illustrations for him." And I go, "I know that name, Vince Garanda." He goes, "Yeah, it's Arnold's trainer and, all the big movie stars." And I said, "Well, that is awesome." He goes, "And my wife is related to the Weeders, Phil and Gail Tauber. Gail Tauber was her name." I said, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "I'm going to do something for you. I'm going to give you this check, and I want you to go down to Vince's studio and work out with him for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever you could get out of this amount of money." It was an exorbitant amount of money for that time. And so I said, "No, I can't take that. That's too much. That's just I was blessed. You guys showing me that, and it's like, wow, Vince, this is something you do for him." Well, he ended up saying, "No, you need to take this, and it's a gift, and thank you so much for your kindness and generosity to help me, and get a workout in." So I ended up going to Vince Garanda in 1981. I think it was like right after my birthday. I just turned 21, and I walk into his gym, and right away Vince goes, "What are you doing? What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I came to work out. It's just like a friend of yours, Phil Tauber." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I know Phil." He goes, I give him a workout, and he really appreciated it. He gave me a check and said, "You need to go talk to Vince." And so Vince says, "Okay." He says, He goes, let me see what you got. And so he looked at me and he says, okay, you got good size and stuff. He goes, they're a little unsymmetrical, not very balanced and, kind of fluffy, just big. He goes, let me see what you do with the weights. And he did. He goes, okay, I got it. It was like 15 minutes. He goes, okay, I got it. He goes, you're doing it all wrong. And I said, what do you mean I'm doing it all wrong?
Sounds like Jack when he goes into a gym. You're doing it all wrong.
Yeah, you're doing it all wrong. Well, you could imagine in my dismay, I'm looking at this guy going, are you kidding me? You're like 160 pounds. I'm too. Look at the muscles on me. I said,
Yeah,
"Are you kidding me?" And he preluded to go. Um, I don't care how much weight you lift. I don't care. He said, "You got to do it right. You're unsymmetrical." I said,
yeah,
"But I could bench press 500 pounds." He went to the cash register, got that check, and threw it at my chest and goes, "Get out of my gym. Just get
yeah,
out of my gym." And I said, "What?" He goes, "Who's the master and who's the trainee?" I said, "Well, you're the master." And he goes, "Are you going to shut up and let me do the training, or are you going to do it all?" I said, "You're the master. I know nothing. I've never worked out, and I don't know anything." And so from that point on, he pretty much floored me and taught me all the fundamentals of fitness, all the different angles and stuff. So I ended up that week with him. I ended up coming back like a month and a half later, spent some time with him, and then over the period of time, like every 3 months, 4 months, I'd drive from San Diego to Studio City to go down to see him. And in 1 year after I met him, he changed my life. My body changed. The people I was training, the bodies changed. I couldn't believe it. And I was using a half, even maybe the quarter of the weight, but the form was so perfect
yes,
that it's like it made it feel like 500 pounds, but it was only half the weight. So from that point forward, it's like I started training people and they'd win shows. They lose weight. It was just like the basic structure of workout was taught to me, the foundational stuff. Same like Jack, Jack, your husband does. You just do the fundamentals and you do them perfect. You do them good, and then you
yes.
add all the other little things to make the shoulders come out and all that.
You know, when we would go do personal appearances, they'd always want to. The press would always want to interview Jack at somebody's gym. So the press would be sitting all set up for Jack's interview. Jack would walk in and he'd walk, you're doing it wrong. He'd see
Yeah,
somebody working out and he says, you're doing it wrong. Wait a minute, let me show you. And I said, Jack, they're waiting for us over there. And
yeah.
he would not go. He was going to fix this guy if it's the last thing he did. So that reminds me of Jack. I mean, you're doing it wrong. And you know how many that times that happened to me? I mean, when I'm with him, I mean, he would always find they'd have their all wrong, arm wrong, or they do something, and he'd say, let me show you, you know. So the
Oh
same
yeah.
thing. See, Vince
Yep.
was the
Even
same
even
way.
even yeah, even to this day, I'll walk through my gym. This is my gym right here, and all the times that I've worked out or walked into gyms where I was just visiting or doing a special assignment there, a grand opening, I would walk around and say, "Look, if you change the position of your back and pull this way and put your chin up, you'll literally work that muscle you're trying to work." And these people
Yeah,
would be like shocked. Then I said, look, put half the weight on and do it right. And all of a sudden they go, oh my God, I could really feel that. So it's just like for me, I don't want to see anybody doing it wrong. I want to see that they get the results that they're
yeah.
looking for.
Well, not everybody's like you. I mean, that's terrific. That's exactly what they should be doing. They should be.
Yeah.
I always told people when I would go around to some of the gyms too. I said, think in if you're working this muscle, you know, this muscle here. I got a little one left.
Oh
Um,
my good. Look at that
and
python.
if if you're working this muscle,
Yeah. There you
think
go.
think into what's happening with it, and that way you give more. I think you give a little more emphasis to the muscle and the muscle
Yep.
like.
Yeah, hey
Well,
Danny,
see,
let's go into that a little bit.
yeah,
How important, obviously the physical part is obviously important, but how important is mindset in building and maintaining long-term health and resilience?
probably the most important of all because the concentration of what you're doing. because really every repetition counts. That's always been my saying. Every repetition counts, and then keeping that muscle in the state of contraction. So another thing Vince, taught me. He goes, look, full range of motion, and you'll hear
Yeah.
everybody saying this, and maybe Jack said this and taught Vince
Oh,
this.
always full range of motion. Right.
Yep, yep, full range of motion in the state of contraction. So that state of contraction is so you got to concentrate hard on where's that contraction begin and end, and you just stay in that zone. So really, I remember, even some of the big stars of bodybuilding really saying, put the mind in the muscle, and I didn't get it until I got it. And Vince really taught me that. He's like, look, you really got to concentrate and think, just like a sculptor thinks of that block of clay turning into a statue. You got to think about that bicep being the size of a softball or a baseball, and just really concentrate on every movement, every inch of that thing going up and down, so that it's almost like a chemical reaction that happens in the body. And you see people, they lift heavier weight, they do it in better form, they get the extra repetitions just by really concentrating on what they're doing and putting all that concentration. But what's happening today, everybody's got headphones on, they're dancing around, and they're thinking about their girlfriend, they're thinking about the next movie they're going to go see. I go, just shut it down, just like Vince had. No music, no chrome, just go in and work out, concentrate on what you're doing, and really focus on what that workout is for that day, and what are the end results. So that was another thing that I always said, what are the end results? See that in your mind constantly, what you want to look like, and then your workouts should
Yeah.
encompass that, and then wrap it around with your nutrition, and then you actually create that. You're creating that masterpiece out of yourself or out of every individual you're training.
Some of the people used to say, "Well, I don't know. How do I get motivated?" Jackie says, "Think of the results." And
Yes.
exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Hey,
The
hey,
results are what
Danny.
matter.
Yeah, Danny, is your approach different with older adults just starting their fitness journey?
Pretty much the same, just a little bit, as baby step. Everything's baby steps. So I make sure that the tendons and ligaments and all the deep tissue are built up in a certain way so that they don't pull anything or, tag anything, so that they have any downtime. I don't like downtime. It's like for me, and they'll try to say, hey, I could do more weight. I said, no, maybe in 2 weeks. It's just like they could pretty much do. The young lady that just left here now, she's 84 years old. She just turned 84. She could barely walk when I met her. She has an 80-acre ranch, has animals. She has dogs and cats, and she says, I guess this is the end because I can't do this. Well, her daughter brought her in to me, and I gave her a big hug when she walked in the door, and I said, thank you for coming into my gym, and let me just show you a few things. And by the end of the week, that woman from one day a week started coming in 5 days a week now, and she went from someone that basically dragging her leg behind her to being more energetic than anybody in the gym. So age doesn't matter. It's just how
No.
you, yeah. And you know that more than anybody, Elaine. Look at you.
Yeah. I you know you have to just, and when you have an ailment, I'm got lost. I don't have I'm blind here, and then I have macular, have a bone on bone knee, but
Yeah.
I you work around Jack always said, and I've stuck with me, work around your ailments, you know.
Yep.
So I'm not 21 anymore, 60 or 70, but until I was probably around 95, I was pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
still learning
I think
a
we're
little.
always 21 in our mind. I think that 21, I still feel like I'm 65 now. I'm still right there, but I still feel like I'm 25 in how I work out and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
recovery's a little different. And you said it exactly. This is exactly what you just said, is we work around the injury, we work around the situation and build the muscle from the backside,
that's
underside,
right.
and let that area rest. So we reinforce that and build it so that there's no longer an issue there. You're
Yes,
careful about it, but we really, we're really careful about working around the injured area. Even all the knee surgeries and hip surgeries we get around here, because we have more of a aging population out here, and Lake Isabella and the Kern Valley here. So a lot of people are up and up in that area. So they're working around the knee situations and ankles and hips and spine. And I
I
said,
want
look,
to say your clients are lucky to have you, you know.
oh, I'm blessed to have you as a friend. That's the biggest thing for me. I think I was, and ask Greg. I think I was more excited to do this and getting in my induction into the Hall of Fame, even though that was
And that's gonna.
phenomenal.
No,
This is even more phenomenal.
I'm glad you brought that up, Danny, because I had the good fortune of introducing Danny into the National Fitness Hall of Fame a couple of weeks ago in
Oh,
Chicago. And one thing that I got to know about Danny was of his community. He brought about 10 or 15 people from his gym, and of course, his family, his wife was with him. And community has plays such a vital role in what you do and the impact you have on that community. Let's talk about the role of community um, and keeping people consistent and committed to wellness within that community. How does that play into what you do?
I think it's something it's always been a part of me, and I think my mother probably she was always somebody that brought people together. She was had that unconditional love for people. She never saw any hatred. And if she didn't like you, she would still give you the love, but just kind of work around you, some way. But for me, the community, I think they really know that you care. They feel that you care. You're when you reach out to people and say, it's just like come in and see what we have. And we actually built our gym around that, so people could actually have somewhere to sit. If you saw our right over here to the right, we have a big lounge center where people could sit and talk and talk about their situations, their workouts, their life in general. But it's so much more. It's so much more than the workout, because everybody's going through something, addictions or loss of life, whatever it be. But when you take the time to sit and talk to people and give them that minute, give them that smile, give them that high five, tell them that they matter, encouragement, consistent, and be consistent in what you do. And just like being in your gym, it's not you say like, hey, you come into my gym, I'll make sure we take care of you. We take care of you. We make sure you're not just a number. Doing outreach programs in the community, to bring people together and see like, hey, these people aren't egotistical. These people really care about the community and at large. Veterans going to the hospital, talking to people, talking to veterans, and just bringing them in and say, hey, fitness really works. It changed my life. It's changed so many people's lives. I've got so many stories. And then once they tell me their story, I said, you know what? I have a story that pretty much runs sideline to yours. And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and it really is. It's just, and I think you guys really encompass that, Elaine, you and Jack, where you brought fitness to the world. The Godfather of fitness. The TV programs. That's community. That's
Well,
bringing people
Jack,
like, hey,
he
there's
started
something
in
in.
the 1930s,
Yeah,
and he invented the first leg extension machine, the first weight selectors, the first uh, let's see, the squat machine, which is now the Smith machine, and
yeah.
those all
He was
came
an
out of
innovator.
his head, you know. And
Hey,
but it was a matter of necessity, and the wall pulleys, all those wall pulleys, that's came out of his head too,
Do you still
So
have some of that stuff there at the house?
yes, she has the whole gym. It's like a
That's,
museum,
oh
and
my God.
I've had the good fortune to work out on the original leg extension on the
yeah,
original
it's
Smith
all put together
machine.
with, what would you call it, hand hammered or hand
Yeah, I mean, who did the welding?
welded? It's hand welded.
Yeah, it's spectacular. I mean, it gives me the chills just thinking about and the calf raise machine, the weight selector machine. Yeah, it's all in there. It's spectacular. Which kind of leads me to
He
this
was way
question,
ahead of the
Danny.
time. Yeah,
Oh, way ahead. Yeah, it kind of
way
leads
ahead.
me to this question. If
Yeah.
if Jack were on this call with us right now, Danny, if he was sitting with us talking with you today, what would you want to ask him or tell him?
I would want to ask him what that spirit inside him dawned him to do what he did. Just like for me, because I think I constantly think about that because um, I think with each individual that comes into my gym and says, help me, I think I always question myself and go, do I have enough knowledge? Do I have enough skill to make this happen for this person? And I think that's made me a better trainer and coach and mentor. And I think with Jack, how he exploded, across the world on TV. I was like, what was the spark in you? What was the spark in you to, do what you did, create what you created, equipment, the uprising and fitness that so many people, followed because he
Matter
really
of
was
necessity.
the matter of necessity. But
Yes,
that's and that has to come from somewhere. That was like the acorn that built the oak. He was the acorn that just went, "Hey, I'm going to be that oak tree." And like
yeah,
going, that's what I always look at. It's like what Greg asked me. It's like, when did it start? And I said my uncle, but I still think there's an underlying something planted in my
yes.
spirit, in my heart,
There's
that
always
it was just there to come out.
there's always a spark. And
Yeah,
if I would answer, I know what Jack would say. He would say that you are doing exactly what he would tell you to do because
yeah,
you have that feeling you care about the people. You take each individual as a person, not just somebody you're going to help that one person, and
yeah.
then you can help this another one person. And what you have, I can see right now, you have what Jack had. So
No,
uh,
Well,
that's enormous coming
just
from you.
I,
and to that point, the name of the podcast is Pass It On.
There you go.
What is the most important lesson that you, Danny, what is the most important lesson that you try to pass on to the people you work with?
I tell people this is like the one thing, and I just said it to somebody yesterday. Listen to the people before you. Listen to the inspiration of the masters before you, which Jack LaLanne was a master of the masters. And I took martial arts, and every time I'd walk into a different dojo, I would look on the walls, and you never see this in gyms. You just see the stars, but you look at 50 years back, 100 years back, there was the master, and there was the person he created and became a master, and then you just keep on going down that line, but you always look back, who started this? And it's like, don't ever forget the master, the people that really started this, not the people that are influencers and stuff now today. I said, look back to the past and look how beautiful the bodies are, from back then, and how they've turned into monsters now. I said, really fundamentally, look back and talk to people who've done it. Don't reinvent the wheel, because there's no reinventing the wheel. Jack started something enormous. Vince threw me into the flame and said, focus and do things the right way, in right form, like a ballet dancer, like um, in perfect form. That's why I called my training company Perfect Form. Don't go by the wayside, and focus on what is being taught, the foundational structure of our works.
he 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 kept saying it's going to evolve. Everybody, each generation is going to get better and better and better. And when he was asked by a reporter, he said, oh, Jack, what's going to happen to the physical fitness industry? Jack said, it's going to explode.
Yeah,
Did.
Yeah, Danny, where do you see the future of fitness heading, especially for those in their 50s, 60s, and beyond?
I think now more and more things are coming out where how important it is, and I think we really need to get the word out for the 40s, 50s, 60s, and above, how important building lean muscle is, how keeping active, how keeping that blood flow going, how all that supportive muscle on the bone structure. I said, what do you think keeps up our bone structure? The muscles. If you let that go, it atrophies. You're like a chicken in a boneless chicken ranch. You're just flopped around on the side of the road, and it becomes a disease. You don't have that strength to even get up off a chair anymore. So I think there's some studies coming up that kind of rebounds back to the past. How important fitness is, and even though there's people that trying to influence and do new things, new workouts, new thing. If you always look back to really the champions and the people that are doing things. They're following old school stuff. So I teach people. I said, age is just a number. I said, look at me at 25, and look at me at 65. The only thing is my skin looks a little bit different. My hair is whiter. I said, but my muscles are just as strong. I feel just as good. I'm still chasing my wife around. I've got more energy than most of the kids around here that I'm training and working out with. I'm still pushing people in the championships and working out. I've got a young lady right now that's actually here. I was training her, getting ready for a show on May 10th. That she was at the induction. It's just like, I have the energy. Don't you want the energy to live? Don't just exist. It's just like, for me, I wake up every day going, I could get out of bed myself. I could do everything fundamentally myself. I take no medications. I'm pretty darn healthy. I've never smoked and never drank, and I've always followed the lifestyle of fitness. And because I always believed in it, I said I don't want to look like that, or that. I'm going to pave this path, and I thought I always that was something in my head. I go, I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to be a role model. I want to be someone that people can look up and ask, go, how did you do that? How is it possible that you're still looking like that at 65, and being able to do the things you are at 65? I said, I just do it. I just do it.
That is fantastic. Well, you sound a lot like Jack. 'Cause
Yeah, maybe his spirit lives in me since I was a kid. There you go.
when you were talking about you still have a gym, but you do a lot of it online. Where is your gym? In case,
It is in Lake Isabella, California.
oh, I know it well. Yes, right. It's beautiful up there.
I just opened up this one. It's 4,200 square feet. I moved it from a 1,500 square foot, kind of a studio fitness, but we still had close to 300 members, and we're right around that right now with a bigger unit that we have. And people in this community love it. They love the camaraderie. They said thank you, because all we had was a bar to go sit, maybe a coffee shop or a restaurant. Now we have a place, your gym, On Point Gym, to be able to come and sit and meet and build a community. And people are getting better friendships, new friendships here. And I do have an online community, but I said, for me, I need to have that personal contact. I have to have human contact. I have to see people's eyes. I like to see that glow in their face when they say they lost
I
five
do
pounds.
too. Yeah.
It's an energy we get. And I know Jack probably had that,
Oh, yeah.
without a
Oh,
doubt, without a doubt. Yeah.
yeah.
Danny, how did you get involved? Because you have quite a reputation with your online business. How,
Yeah.
how did you get involved in that? And tell us a little bit about the nature of that.
Well, online business, I was actually, a company actually contacted me, and they said, hey, man, you got a great following on Instagram, Facebook. And they wanted me to go on TikTok, and they said, you should really look about doing online training. And they said, with your experience, you could reach the world and teach what you teach, around the world. And I said, but I'm used to that personal contact. Am I going to get that? They said, well, you just tell us what you want, and we could design that, feel and look around your online business. Um, and lo and behold, they came up with the animations of my workouts and the meals that I wanted, and which was a point and click. I mean, it lost some things in translation, um, to where it would be a Zoom call like this where I'd be able to talk to the people. But it's that personal. What was it? The accountability. I'm like going, are they going to follow? Because when I see them walk in the door, I can say, what did you eat this weekend because you're bloated? or you didn't lose the 2 pounds I wanted you to lose, because I can see it in their makeup when they walk in the door. Online, you can't because it's kind of flat, and it's like I said, all right, turn, here's, give me a newspaper that it is today. But he said, you know what, just try it and see if it works. Well, from the get-go, I was charging, I'm charging just under $400 a month for online training. And before you know it, I have 30 clients, 40 clients, 50 clients. And I was making great
One on
monthly
one, is it
income.
one on one? One on one?
One-on-one. Yep, one-on-one trainings. And everybody's getting massive success. There's a few people I had to chase around and then, say, hey, get off the pot, just follow my plan. It works every time. The only thing that fails in my plan is you're not following it. And it just continued to grow. And so it's just like the income's great. I just miss the connectivity. I love being in my gym. I love being around people. I love seeing that energy that comes out of them individually and then as a group, even people that I don't train, just my members. But the online's great because I can spread the word. I can spread the
Yeah.
word of Jack LaLanne. I can spread the word of Vince Guerin. I can spread, the energy that I have and the results. They're just like you were saying, Elaine. It's all about the results. And when you have somebody that says, "I'm getting married. I already made the date, and I'm getting married in November," and I get them in shape so fast, they end up getting married on June 15th because they already fit in their dress and they could fit a date into it. I mean, all of a sudden you feel like this is magical that I could transform bodies that fast, and then help the world. And I really want to expand on it. And I want to help a couple more people go online with me and really try to do something in the digital world but keep that connectivity and keep the old school taste into it.
We're going to do a lightning round here for you, Danny. 4 quick questions. All right.
Yeah.
First question, morning, afternoon, or evening workout?
Morning.
Morning person. Okay. Favorite
That's
post
not.
work?
I want to. This was a question that was asked Jack a lot. Now he always said mornings too,
Mm-hmm.
because you get it out of the way and you get it done. But you could still get the same results, can't you? If you couldn't do it in the morning, as long as you do it, isn't that
Exactly. Just do it.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite post workout fuel?
Uh, rice. I love rice.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Good
Yeah.
answer. All right. Go to recovery tool or ritual? What's your go to recovery tool or ritual?
Me is still the old school Epsom salts in a hot tub.
And then one word that describes your approach to life right now.
Um, unconditional love.
Unconditional. Very,
I like
very
that.
good. I
Yeah.
like that too. Hey, Danny, tell people where they can find out more about you, what you do, and all about that.
I think the biggest resource for me, it just seems like in the digital world, connectivity. I don't even carry on a business card anymore. I just tell them to go to my Danny Torgl Instagram site or my Danny Torgl Facebook. I kept it real simple. I have a DannyTorgl.com, but it's just more of my training. But if you want to find out what I'm doing on a daily basis, who I'm training, what we're doing, where we're growing as far as expansion for the gym, we're doing our grand openings. It's always on my Facebook, Danny.Torgl.
Danny, I appreciate your coming on with us today, and another Jack LaLanne.
Oh my God. That's a big
you,
ticket to lead
you
up
think
to.
like you think like him, and
Yeah.
Vince Gironda was a very good friend, your mentor, and I hope that everybody will get something out of this today, and that they will, if you've been thinking about doing something, then just do it.
Just do it.